this?
What? Oh, that's just my old video on the Powerjack.
Well, why did you say it was a bad weapon? You know I use this all the time.
Look, I just enjoy the other melees a lot more. The Powerjack just doesn't meet my expectations in what I want in a melee.
Oh, really? Well, you use the extinguisher, which is way worse than the Powerjack, you know.
What's the point you're trying to make with this, Zoe?
Please, give it another chance. It's my favorite melee.
Well, I suppose I could give it another go. It's been long enough. What do I get out of this anyway?
Maybe you'll figure out why it's a mainstay weapon for other pyro mains. Plus...
You know what, the Powerjack is actually alright, and no, it's not because of what I was just told. I genuinely think that the Powerjack is a pretty good weapon now I've had more time to really see what makes it a fun equip. Let's get that boring stat check out of the way. When a weapon is more active, the Pyro gains a plus 15% movement speed, as well as earning 25 health back for every kill for the downside of having a 20% damage vulnerability. I remember saying that the Powerjack is basically pointless if you don't have it active, as none of the stats come into play, when in hindsight that couldn't be further from the truth. Imagine running around as Pyro with a damage vulnerability over time, it just wouldn't be fun. They had previously had similar stats that were permanent as long as you had the right item set equipped. The gas jockey's gear used to give the Pyro a plus 10% faster movement speed and a plus 10% bullet damage vulnerability when the Degreaser, Powerjack and Attendant Hat were all equipped together. Obviously, this alongside the other 4 sets were pay to win, seeing as how the Pyro who had the set immediately had the upper hand against another Pyro. The point I'm getting at here is that if the Powerjack stats were always active, it wouldn't work, because this is more of a utility weapon instead of one you use to attack. Now this is rich, especially coming from me, as I love weapons that give you more damage output, but I've come to appreciate those weapons that bring more to the table than just power. The Stock Shotgun is one such weapon that I've come to enjoy using a lot more, and the same can be said here. In fact, as much as I've bragged about the Extinguisher having more usage for me, I've been pulling out the Powerjack much more than I do with any other melee I've equipped. This is due to, of course, the speed buff. As you can obviously tell, bringing out the Powerjack will make the Pyro's movement speed a little quicker, almost competing with the Scout in that area. This makes it an amazing tool to use to get to control points and objectives a lot sooner. And again, I know I bashed on the speed in the past, making it seem less of an upside than it actually is, but this really does come into play more often than you think. Having that slight speed boost in mobility can really save either you or your team's hind in a number of situations. I severely underestimated the usefulness of the boost because I was stuck in a playstyle while I only brought out the melee for a finishing blow with the Extinguisher. Since I've been pulling out the Powerjack more often, the upsides honestly are superb when the situation is right. This isn't a weapon that you should solely rely on for damage, this is mainly a great utility that rewards you for taking the risk, as is seen with the other 2 stats. Now of course in the past the Powerjack gave you much more health on kill and even overhealed the Pyro if they already had full health, but I think the 25 health you receive on kill is a good enough compromise overall. Moving at a faster speed makes it a little trickier for enemies to hit you, which is why the 20% damage vulnerability is a valid downside. Not only should you be using this sparingly, it pretty much tells you, hey, stop rushing enemies with me out. Is the damage vulnerability to everything a little too much still though? Well no, I don't think so anymore. Again, I know I keep saying this is a utility melee, but I really need to make this stick in your brain because I was foolish in thinking this had no use outside of running to a point slightly faster. It's used for so much more, like running away slightly faster too. Well okay, here's what I mean by that. So you're coming around a corner to a place you know enemies will be at. You turn the corner and there's more than you expected and you're taking too much damage. You either try and light them on fire before you die or run. If you know how to play Pyro, you'd know that overextending is stupid, but also you'd obviously run. Now what would you use in order to get away safely? The Powerjack or literally anything else? If you're good at moving around to dodge damage, then the vulnerability downside doesn't come into play that much. In fact, it's usually non-existent if you make sure you don't get too close or too damaged. Bringing out the weapon at the right time will usually mean you'll be fine for the most part. It's not recommended to fight people with, as well, melees are typically the very last resort for any class, but with the damage vulnerability this really does help incentivize the use of the speed boost over the health on kill. With all this talk about speed, there must be something helpful that comes with having more, right? Well, you'd be correct. The Powerjack gives the Pyro the luxury of being able to make some jumps they typically miss. When I asked people in the Discord server, on YouTube and on Twitter about their opinion on the weapon, I was reminded that the Powerjack is a good choice for more mobility if you don't want to be neutered. Consider that the thermal thruster, while giving immense mobility to the Pyro, stops them from having a reliable secondary on hand if you can't attack with their primary. Then look at the detonator and scorch shot. Yes, they give less mobility than the thruster, but you can still attack with them. However, you then have the downside of taking damage if you want to use those methods, essentially putting you at at a disadvantage in a fight if there aren't any health packs around. Now I'm not going to lie to you and say that the Powerjack has immense usage in this department, but with ledges just out of reach of the Pyro, they can easily make them now with the additional speed. Going back to the fact that it's a melee, I think this is the perfect slot for this kind of utility to work really well. Pyro has enough good flamethrowers, shotguns and flare guns to make up for the damage that you'd miss out on with the melee. If anything, Pyro is the best in close quarters with their equip, so missing out on kills with a Powerjack isn't that detrimental in the long run. Should you still try and kill when possible? Of course, but luckily the utility of the weapon doesn't necessitate using it over and over. I asked fellow Pyro main Risemonger on why they use it as their main melee, and they also agreed that the utility of the weapon is the biggest draw. In fact, pretty much everyone I asked said the same thing, so the Powerjack is one of those weapons that has a purpose rather than just being another choice in the melee slot that you may or may not use sometimes. Anyway, back to what Rise said, they bring up the point that not only is it good to escape with, it can also be good to close the distances on enemies trying to escape, which is a great point. Now I brought up the point that it almost brings the speed of the Pyro up to par with the Scout almost, but that's even more impressive when you check the speed of the other classes. Now Pyro easily trumps classes like the Soldier, Heavy and Demo Man in speed even without the Powerjack, and shares the same speed as the Engineer and Sniper. However, key targets like Medics and Spies are just out of reach in that area. With the Powerjack, however, it brings the Pyro speed higher than both of theirs, meaning they can catch up and take them out more often than before. Pyro with his speed boost will also very easily catch up to those classes who are slower regardless, but this saves precious time that the enemy could have used to heal or escape without dying, so every second is accounted for with this. Overall, I severely underestimated the Powerjack in my last video. I took the stats at face value and didn't really give much thought into how versatile it makes the Pyro without taking anything major away from the overall playstyle. Now, would I say that I agree with the Powerjack being the meta overall? Well, yes and no. I can totally see why this is the popular choice as other melees aren't as balanced. The Home Wrecker, which I said was a much better choice at first, is much too situational to be a regular equip due to its main purpose being a sapper removal tool. The only problem with that is if there aren't any engineers on your team or spies on the enemy's team, it becomes a worse stock. The Neon Annihilator is only good on wet players, which only a handful of maps even uses, and the third degree is just stock again if the enemy team doesn't have a medic. Some other melees are too focused on one thing as well. You could argue that the Powerjack is as well with the emphasis on speed, but melees like the Back Scratcher focus on power while absolutely obliterating their healing from friendly sources that aren't health packs. The Extinguisher, which I absolutely love, is too focused on burning players to be good, which neuters its overall usefulness again. And then there's just bad melees. The Powerjack focuses on bringing them focus to more mobility at the risk of taking a little more damage. That to me is a balanced enough trade-off. However, where I see it being a fantastic utility, I don't see it being a great weapon overall. I know I just ragged on pretty much every other melee, but they have their uses. You can't save engineer buildings with a Powerjack, you can't crit a burning player with a Powerjack, you can't really do much damage with a Powerjack at all. I'm not denouncing it as bad as I did before, but metas are stupid. They're called that for a reason, I know, but there's plenty of choice for a numerous amount of situations that I still can't call the Powerjack the definitive choice. Other melees cover other areas much better, and that's just a fact. And let's not forget, it's not all that useful when it comes to certain game modes either. In modes like Control Points, it shines at being able to allow the Pyro to scurry to their team quicker than usual, and on Payload Offense it's good when there isn't too much time left. In defensive situations, however, it doesn't really help that much. Again, on modes like Payload and Attack Defend, once an objective has been captured, it limits the usefulness of the speed boost. It basically excels in offense, but is quite limited in defensive situations. But yes, overall I can easily say that the Powerjack is a great melee, better than I gave it credit for at first. People have been telling me so for ages now, but I do like to focus mainly on combo Pyro for the most part, so trying other methods wasn't a high priority for me at the time. I might even consider it being one of my favourite melees at this point as well. I bet there's a couple of you out there that don't use it like I used to do, as I saw in the comments, but consider giving it a go. You might find that you actually like it like I do. If you enjoyed this little dissection of the Powerjack, I'd highly appreciate it if you shared it around, as well as giving this video a like alongside subscribing for future videos. I'm really trying to dive into weapons and seeing what the appeal is from this point, so I hope you stick around. This has been your Fempire enthusiast BonOakley signing out. See you guys in the next one.
It seems that you have successfully completed this video. So why not watch some more? Thanks so much for your support. See you all soon.